Good evening, and thank you for staying with us. Now, imagine being born and having no legal proof that you exist. That's the reality for millions of children across Africa who aren't registered at birth. It's a serious issue that affects access to healthcare. To help us unpack why birth registration matters and what can be done to improve systems across Africa, we're joined live by Nankali Maksud, UNICEF's Regional Chief of Child Protection for Eastern and Southern Africa. Nankali, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate this.
Let's start with the basics. Why is child registration such a big deal? And what's at stake when a child is not registered?
Well, child registration is important because this is the first time that we'll actually officially recognize that a child has been born. Unfortunately, we live in a continent where children are born and die, and there's no legal recognition that they ever existed. Without having birth registration, let alone not knowing that they exist, children remain invisible to systems that are meant to protect and to be able to serve them. So children in many countries on the continent will not be able to go to school, will not be able to access healthcare, any forms of protection, and later in life might also impact them in terms of employment, voting, and other types of civic participation.
From what you're seeing, what are the main reasons so many children across Eastern and Southern Africa are still not registered?
So many challenges still exist for us, even though, a number of countries are making progress on the continent and are delivering on the commitments that they have made for children on the continent. We still have a lot of issues. Families are facing issues with long distances for them to go and get their children registered. Not only is it long distance, but also the indirect costs like transportation for poor families. Other families have limited awareness. They don't even know that this exists, or this is something that they need to be able to do. And then we also have legal and social barriers where, impact, unfortunately, and bring in a gender perspective. Mothers in some countries cannot register their children without their father's presence or even proof of marriage. And then if you look at today's world, there's issues around digital solutions, which are meant to be able to help us, but in many ways also hinder us, because if you don't have access to a phone, if you don't have access to internet connectivity, that might make some families be unable to access registration services.
UNICEF talks about CRVs as a core for core governance and infrastructure. That's a big term. Break it down for us. What does it mean for governments on the ground?
So for governments on the ground, CRVS and specifically CRVS is civil registration, civil registration and vital statistics. But within that, we zoom in specifically on birth registration. What does that mean? For governments, if you're going to be able to accurately plan, if you're going to be able to understand what population you have, how many schools you need to be able to have, how many hospitals you need to be able to have, how much budget you need to be able to have, what type of workforce, birth registration and more broadly the civil registration services really help governments to be able to do that planning, to do that financing, and to be able to deliver services effectively. So this goes to the cornerstone of governance perspectives. So there's an aspect where we're looking at this from a child perspective, but there's another part where we're looking at it as countries within the African continent, and more for us, what are we going to know? We make a lot of estimates now about the populations that we have, but without having this precise information, we will be a continent that does things without any proper plans.
You've worked across the region, and give us some examples of how you've been able to reach out to the many communities in the region, your outreach, as well as many other facilitation efforts in an effort to bring about awareness with regards to this.
So UNICEF works in almost all countries within the African platform. And I must say that indeed we're there to be able to support UNICEF, and the rest of the UN system are there to be able to support governments to deliver on this. And so in our facilitation role, we're able to bring in different experiences from different countries across the region and beyond as well. So we don't take the credit, but we know that we support governments to be able to deliver on these services. And we've seen lots of progress in countries like Namibia, Rwanda, Tanzania, Botswana. For example, in Tanzania, which happens to also be my own country, we have a simplified birth registration system which links health facilities to the national CRVS database. And that means that when a child is born, there's an immediate link between the health facility where they're born to the national CRVS database, which ensures that they're quickly, there's a quick notification that their child has been born, and there's a quick access for them also to be able to gain birth certificates. In Mozambique, we're seeing outreach teams using tablets to register children. So again, you see that technology really helping us to move closer to those who are living in remote areas, and also be able to bring that information back to the center where it's required for these birth certificates to be issued.
How do you find and rate the coordination efforts between the various ministries like your Home Affairs, Health and Education? Do you find them effective?
So, I'm glad you're raising that question. The issue of interoperability of these different systems is really important. So I just gave the example of, a child who's born in hospital and how that they can be able to quickly link into the Home Affairs database, as it were. It's a challenge, but it's something that we're overcoming. We recognize that it's a key strategy for us to be able to support families, to support mothers and fathers to quickly register their children. If they cannot be able to access one place and get a number of services, it becomes very difficult for families, and especially those who might be in rural areas or who are just coming from poor backgrounds. And so the importance of interoperability, where you have the education system talking to the health system, talking to Home Affairs, is really key, especially for vulnerable populations, but even for families at large. People just don't want to be disturbed. They want to be able to access one service point and get multiple services at the same time. And I think that's fair enough for them to demand.
And lastly, Nankali, what would it take to get a birth registration prioritized, in particular at the highest political level? And what kind of leadership and investment are we talking about here?
So, let me just say that on the African continent, certainly at the highest level within the African Union, we have today, as a continent, the African Charter, which has made a commitment to ensure that we register children soon after they're born. In most of the countries on the continent as well, we have laws and policies in place, again, that make that commitment to ensure that we have this service available for families. The challenge, though, of course, is issues like financing. And of course, this year has been particularly difficult for many of our countries on the continent, that we're facing challenges in terms of being able to finance some of these services. But it's possible. We've seen countries like South Africa, like Botswana, like Rwanda, as I've described. It's about having the political will and being committed enough to the population that you have and serve to ensure that these services are in place. We have countries who are doing it. It is possible. You just need to be able to have the right political will and be committed to be able to ensure that you can be able to serve them in the most effective manner.
Nankali, thanks for your time this evening, for talking to us about childbirth registration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this.
Thank you, Nankali Maksud, for joining us and sharing these insights. That was Nankali Maksud from UNICEF, highlighting why
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
birth registration
Bye.
is so important for every child's rights and protection. Thanks for listening.